At 57, I thought the most embarrassing thing I could do was fall in love with a 30-year-old woman. I was wrong. The worst part was discovering that she had seen something worth loving in me long before I could see it myself. 3 months earlier, I stood beneath strings of warm lights at my niece's wedding outside Charleston, holding a champagne glass I had barely touched and pretending I wasn't counting all the couples around me. 11 weeks had passed since my divorce became final. 28 years of marriage had ended with signatures, polite lawyers, and David telling me something I still heard whenever a mirror caught me at the wrong angle. At your age, Claire, companionship is probably the best you can hope for. He had said it gently. That somehow made it worse. I was Claire Whitmore, an interior designer who could walk into a ruined house and tell you exactly which walls deserved saving. I could recognize walnut beneath 50 years of bad varnish. I could find beauty under cracked plaster. But standing there in a navy dress I'd nearly returned twice, I couldn't remember how to find any of it in myself. Then I heard a camera shutter. I turned. A woman stood about 15 feet away beneath an oak tree, lowering a black camera from her face. She was young. That was the first thing I noticed. The second was her expression. She wasn't embarrassed that I'd caught her photographing me. She smiled. Not the careful smile people had been giving me since the divorce. A real one. Curious. Warm. Almost amused. I walked toward her. Excuse me, did you just take my picture? I did. Why? She glanced at the camera screen. 'Cause you were laughing. I looked behind me as if she might mean somebody else. I wasn't laughing. You were. For about 2 seconds. She turned the camera toward me. There I was beneath the lights, head tilted back, one hand resting against my collarbone. I barely recognized the woman on the screen. She looked unguarded. Alive. My throat tightened. Delete it, please. The woman's smile faded. Not from offense. Something softer. Why? Because I don't like photographs of myself. She studied me for one quiet second too long. Then rain began. Tapping against the leaves. Guests squealed and hurried toward the reception tent as the drizzle turned into a sudden southern downpour. I started after them, but my heels sank into the wet grass. A hand caught my elbow. Careful. Her voice was close now. I smelled rain and coffee on her jacket. Thank you, I said. She opened a large black umbrella over us. For a moment, the wedding disappeared behind silver rain. Just the two of us beneath that small circle of shelter. I'm Maya Bennett, she said. Claire Whitmore. I know. I looked at her. Something flickered across her face and vanished. Before I could ask what she meant, she held up the camera again. Keep the picture, she said. Someday you're going to need proof you still looked like this. Then she walked me toward the lights, while I wondered why a stranger's words had reached somewhere my husband's never could. For the next 3 weeks, I told myself I had forgotten Maya Bennett. This was almost convincing as long as I ignored the photograph she had emailed me the morning after the wedding. I had opened it once, then again that evening, then enough times that I stopped counting. The woman in the picture still looked unfamiliar to me. Happy. Open. As if the future had not frightened her yet. I buried myself in work instead. My firm had been hired to restore an 1880s house near the Battery, a beautiful place with faded blue shutters, heart pine floors, and enough water damage to keep me occupied for months. Old houses made sense to me. They never pretended they had not been hurt. On Monday morning, I arrived before 8 with coffee in one hand and rolled plans under my arm. My project manager, Susan, met me inside. The preservation board approved the photography package, she said. Photographer should be here any minute. Photography package? Documentation for the historical archive. You approved it last Thursday. Apparently divorce had also stolen portions of my memory. I was examining a cracked fireplace mantel when I heard footsteps behind me. Morning, Claire. I knew the voice before I turned. Maya stood in the doorway wearing jeans, a white button-down shirt, and a camera bag over one shoulder. Rain had darkened a few strands of her hair. My pulse gave one ridiculous jump. Maya, you remember me. Hard to forget someone who refuses to delete photographs. She smiled. I considered that an artistic disagreement. Susan appeared between us, delighted by the coincidence. You two know each other? We met at a wedding, Maya said. Briefly, I added. Maya's eyes stayed on mine. Very briefly. Something in the way she said it made the room feel smaller. Susan handed Maya a schedule and disappeared upstairs. I focused on my plans. Maya began photographing the original molding, windows, and damaged plaster. She worked quietly, professionally. That should have made her easier to ignore. It did not. 20 minutes later, she placed a paper cup beside my drawings. Black coffee. No sugar. I stared at it. How did you know? She adjusted the lens on her camera without looking at me. Lucky guess. That was not a lucky guess. At the wedding, I had been drinking champagne. I had never mentioned coffee. Maya finally met my eyes, and for 1 second I saw something behind her smile. Recognition. Maybe even nervousness. Have we met before? I asked. Not exactly. What does that mean? Before she could answer, Susan called from upstairs.
Maya lifted her camera bag.
Later, I watched her climb the staircase, unsettled by how naturally that single word assumed there would be a later. Outside, thunder rolled over Charleston Harbor. By noon, the sky had turned nearly black, and weather alerts began lighting up our phones. A tropical storm had changed direction overnight. Susan ordered everyone home before the roads flooded. Maya stood near the front window, staring at her phone. Something wrong? I asked. She hesitated. My rental cottage is near Folly Beach. The owner says water is already coming across the road. I should have simply wished her luck and driven home. Instead, I heard myself ask the question that would change everything. Do you have somewhere else to stay? You can stay with me, I said, and immediately wondered whether the storm had somehow damaged my judgment before it even arrived. Maya looked up from her phone. Claire, you do not have to do that. I know. The answer came too. Quickly. I gathered my plans and pretended to study the weather alert. My house is inland, and I have a guest cottage behind it. You can stay there until the road's clear. Maya watched me with that same unnerving attention she had given me at the wedding. Then she smiled. Thank you. By the time we reached my neighborhood, rain was sweeping sideways across the windshield, and oak branches bent beneath the wind. My house sat on a quiet street beneath enormous live oaks, a pale gray place David and I had bought 14 years earlier. Since the divorce, every room seemed to contain an echo. Maya stepped inside and looked around slowly. This feels like you, she said. You have known me for approximately 3 hours. 3 weeks and 3 hours. I looked at her. She smiled again. Right. The wedding. I showed her the cottage through the kitchen windows, but before we could carry her bag outside, water began dripping through its ceiling. Then another drop appeared. Then another. I closed my eyes. Of course. Maya laughed softly. I am perfectly capable of sleeping on a couch. You are not sleeping on my couch. I have 3 bedrooms and only one person living here. The words sounded sadder aloud than they had in my head. Maya did not comment. She simply carried her bag upstairs. That kindness unsettled me more than pity would have. By 7, the power went out. I found candles in the pantry and lit the fireplace while Maya attempted dinner on my gas stove. She made pasta with tomatoes, basil, and enough salt to preserve it through the next century. I took one bite and reached for my water. Maya stared at me. That bad? I considered lying. Terrible. She laughed so suddenly that I laughed too. Really laughed. The sound surprised me. Later, we sat near the fireplace while rain tapped steadily against the windows. Without electricity, there was nothing to hide behind. No television. No email. No work. Maya tucked her feet beneath her and looked toward the mantel, where an old wedding photograph still stood because I had never decided what to do with it. Were you happy with him? She asked. I stared into the fire. That should have been an easy question. It was not. I was good at marriage, I said finally. Maya waited. I packed lunches, remembered birthdays, hosted dinners, helped build his career, made everything look beautiful. That is not what I asked. I turned toward her. Her expression held no judgment, only patience, the kind that leaves nowhere to hide. I swallowed. I do not know. The confession came out almost soundless. For 28 years I had known exactly what role I was supposed to play. Wife, partner, professional, dependable woman. But love? I looked down at my hands. Maybe I became so good at staying that I forgot to ask whether I was alive inside the life I stayed for. Maya said nothing for several seconds. Then very softly, "Neither did I," thunder murmured somewhere beyond the windows. I looked at her. For the first time, the confident young woman seemed uncertain, almost lonely. And suddenly I understood something that frightened me more than the storm outside. Whatever had brought Maya Bennett into my life, she was not the only one carrying a secret. Neither did I. Those 3 words stayed between us longer than the thunder. Maya stared into the fire, turning her coffee mug slowly between both hands even though it had been empty for nearly an hour. I wanted to ask what she meant, but something in her expression told me not to rush her. Outside, rain moved across the windows in silver sheets. Inside, the room smelled of cedar smoke, basil, and the remains of our tragically salty dinner. Finally, Maya spoke. "My parents loved each other from a distance." I looked at her. She gave a small shrug. "Beautiful house. Good schools. Christmas cards where everybody wore matching sweaters. From the outside we were perfect. But inside that house, affection always seemed conditional." Her voice softened. "My mother worked constantly. My father traveled. Nobody argued much because nobody said much. I learned early that leaving a room was easier than explaining what I felt in it. I understood that more than I wanted to." "And your relationships?" I asked. Maya smiled without humor. "I have had them." That was not an answer. She glanced at me. "Look at you interrogating the photographer. Occupational hazard. I restore houses. Hidden. Damage makes me suspicious." That earned a real smile. Then it disappeared. "I have dated women," she said. "Good women. Kind women. And every time things became serious, I found a reason to leave. Wrong city. Wrong timing. Too much work. Once I blamed a woman for chewing too loudly. I laughed before I could stop myself. Maya pointed at me. It was extremely loud. I am sure it was devastating. We were both smiling now, but sadness remained behind her eyes. I stopped laughing. "Why did you really leave?" Maya looked toward the dark window. "Because staying means somebody eventually gets close enough to disappoint you. Or you disappoint them first." The fire shifted softly. I thought about David. About 28 years spent believing staying itself was proof of love. Maya had spent her life escaping. I had spent mine remaining. Somehow, neither of us had learned the difference between love and fear. "Maybe you just have not met the right woman," I said. Maya turned toward me. "Or maybe nobody ever taught me how to stay." Her voice was quiet now. "Not teasing." No easy smile. She leaned forward slightly, elbows resting on her knees. "Teach me how to love, Claire."
I stared her.
Then I laughed because the alternative was admitting how deeply those words affected me. "You are asking the wrong woman." "No," she said. "I think I am asking exactly the right one." The room seemed suddenly warmer. I could hear the rain, the clock in the hallway, my own uneven breathing. Maya's gaze held mine. Nothing happened, and yet everything felt different. I stood too quickly and carried our mugs toward the kitchen. Maya followed. "Claire." I turned. She was only a few feet away, close enough that I could see the uncertainty beneath her confidence. "I am 57, I said. "You are 30. I know how subtraction works." 27 years, Maya. Her expression softened. "I asked you about love, not arithmetic." For one suspended second, neither of us moved. Then the lights flickered back on, flooding the kitchen with brightness. I stepped away. Maya looked down, giving me the escape I had silently asked for. But later, alone in my bedroom, I realized the frightening part was not that Maya was 27 years younger than me. It was that for those few seconds in the kitchen, I had forgotten to care. By morning, the storm had moved north, but Maya remained in my house because the road to her rental was still closed. I told myself this was temporary. 2 days, perhaps 3. Then she found me standing at the kitchen counter at 6:15, staring at 2 coffee mugs as if they represented a complicated moral decision. "Good morning," she said. "You are cheerful before sunrise. It is suspicious." I handed her a mug. She took one sip and smiled. "You remembered the cinnamon." "I noticed things," I said. Maya leaned against the counter. "Is that lesson number 1? I should have dismissed the idea. Instead, I heard myself say, love is noticing." Her smile faded into something gentler. "All right. Lesson 1. That became our joke. Except it stopped feeling like one. Over the next several days, Maya noticed that I always opened the kitchen window while making coffee, even when the air was cool. She noticed I avoided lilies at the grocery store. When she asked why, I told her they reminded me of the hospital room where my mother died 8 years earlier. The next afternoon, Maya returned from photographing the restoration house with a small bunch of yellow daisies. "No lilies," she said, placing them in a blue pitcher. I had to look away. On Thursday, an email from my divorce attorney arrived while we were working at the dining table. David wanted to discuss several pieces of furniture still listed as shared property. My mother's walnut desk was among them. I read the message twice. My hands went cold. Maya noticed. Of course she did. She did not ask questions. She closed her laptop, made tea, and sat across from me while rainwater dripped quietly from the oak trees outside. After several minutes I said, "You do not have to sit here." "I know." She stayed. "Lesson 2," I whispered. "Love is staying." Maya looked at me over her mug. "I am beginning to think you make these up when convenient." That evening, we returned to the restoration house to photograph the newly uncovered staircase before contractors arrived the next morning. Golden light stretched through the tall windows. Dust floated in it like tiny stars. Maya stood on the landing with her camera while I examined the railing below. "Claire," she called. "Yes." Lesson 3. I looked up. She lowered the camera. "Love is telling the truth before the truth becomes convenient." I smiled. "That is annoyingly good. I learned from an expert." "Then tell me something true," I said. Maya became still. The house suddenly seemed enormous around us. Finally she descended the stairs until only one step separated us. "I am falling for someone completely inappropriate." My heartbeat stumbled. "Who?" I asked, although some part of me already knew. Maya opened her mouth. My phone rang. David. His name glowed across the screen between us like something from another lifetime. I nearly ignored it. Nearly. But 28 years of habit won. I answered. "Claire," David said, "I have been thinking. Can we talk?" "About what?" "About us." Across the room, Maya quietly lifted her camera back. David continued speaking, but I barely heard him. Maya reached the doorway, then glanced back at me. There was no anger in her face. That would have been easier. There was disappointment. By the time David said he wanted another chance, Maya was already gone. David kept talking after Maya left, but his words blurred into the empty rooms around me. He spoke about history, stability, almost 3 decades together. He said people made mistakes. He said we owed it to ourselves to reconsider. Once those words would have opened a door in me. That night they only made me notice how relieved I felt when I finally said I need time. After the call I drove home alone. Maya was in the guest room with the door closed. The next morning she was polite. Too polite. She thanked me for the coffee. She discussed camera angles at the restoration house. She never mentioned the staircase or the truth she had almost told me. By afternoon I could not stand it. I found her laptop on the dining table while she was outside photographing the garden after the storm. The screen was awake. I reached only to move it away from my blueprints when an image stopped me. It was me. Not from the wedding. Not from the restoration project. I was younger, standing behind a podium, beneath a banner from a design conference in Atlanta. The date on the photograph was 12 years earlier. My stomach tightened. Maya came through the back door carrying her camera. She saw the screen and froze. "Claire, why do you have this?" She set the camera down carefully. "I can explain." "Then explain." Maya sat opposite me. For the first time since meeting her, she looked genuinely afraid of saying the wrong thing. "My mother was a designer," she began. Her name was Rebecca Bennett. The name reached through 12 years of memory. Rebecca. Talented. Quiet. She had worked briefly with one of our partner firms. I remembered a conference. A complaint involving a senior executive who had been making her uncomfortable. I had supported Rebecca when others encouraged her to stay silent for the sake of her career. "You helped her," Maya said. "You made sure people listened. She kept working because of you." I stared at the old photograph. Maya continued. "I was 18. My mother came home from that conference and told me about a woman who walked into a room full of powerful people and refused to pretend something was acceptable just because confronting it was inconvenient. She talked about you for years." My chest tightened. "So you knew who I was at the wedding?" "Yes." And the coffee? Maya gave a small, embarrassed smile. My mother remembered ridiculous details about people she admired. She once told me you drank coffee black because you said sugar ruined perfectly good beans. I should have felt touched. Instead, something colder moved through me. You took the restoration assignment because of me. Maya hesitated. Yes. I stood. Then none of this was accidental. Meeting again was not. No. Her voice shook slightly. But everything after that was. I looked at her and suddenly every warm moment felt uncertain. The flowers. The storm. The conversations beside the fire. Her requests for lessons. Was she seeing me, or some heroic woman her mother had created? Maya seemed to read the question on my face. Claire, I admired you before I knew you. That is not the same as knowing you. Then what do you know now? She stepped closer but stopped several feet away. I know you pretend burnt toast is intentional. I know you straighten picture frames when you are nervous. I know you still keep your mother's voicemail because deleting it feels too final. My eyes stung. Maya swallowed. And I know the woman I imagined at 18 was impressive. But the woman standing in front of me is real. That is the woman I am falling in love with. I could not answer. Because for the first time, I understood that Maya had not wandered into my life by chance. And I had no idea whether that made what I felt more beautiful or more frightening. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard Maya saying she was falling in love with me. By morning, the storm had left Charleston washed clean beneath a pale blue sky, but nothing inside me felt clear. Maya was already in the kitchen when I came downstairs. Her suitcase stood beside the back door. You are leaving, I said. The road to the cottage reopened. She kept her eyes on her coffee. I thought you might want some space. I should have agreed. Instead, I asked, were you ever going to tell me about your mother? Yes. When? When I knew you trusted me enough to hear it without thinking everything between us was a lie. I folded my arms. You did not give me that choice. I know. Maya looked at me then. I should have told you sooner. I am sorry. Her apology was simple. No defense. Somehow that made my anger harder to hold. I walked toward the window. Maybe you do not love me, Maya. Maybe you love the woman your mother described. Behind me, silence. Then footsteps. She stopped several feet away. The woman my mother described never burns toast. I turned despite myself. Maya continued, her voice trembling around a smile. She never reorganizes the dishwasher after someone else loads it. She does not wake at 5:30 because she is worried about a staircase railing. She definitely does not cry in the shower and then pretend the water made her eyes red. My breath caught. Maya's smile disappeared. I did not know those things until I knew you. Claire, I do not want the woman from that photograph. I want the complicated one standing here. Something inside me gave way. Not dramatically. Quietly. Like a locked window finally. Opening after years of paint sealed it shut. I crossed the distance between us. Maya did not move. She let me choose. I touched her cheek and for one suspended second, I could hear nothing except the old kitchen clock. Then I kissed her. It was gentle. Brief. More question than answer. When I stepped back, Maya's eyes were shining. You took your time, she whispered. I laughed, and the sound broke whatever fear remained between us. For 3 days, happiness arrived in small things. Coffee on the porch. Her camera beside my blueprints. Her hand finding mine while we walked through the restoration house. Then Monday morning my phone rang. It was Susan. Claire, we have a problem. One of our largest clients had heard that I was involved with a woman nearly 30 years younger than me. Nobody said the word scandal. They did not need to. Susan carefully explained that the client was reconsidering a major contract because they were concerned about professional distractions. I stood frozen beside my desk. Maya heard enough to understand. After I ended the call, she came closer. We will figure this out. The word should have comforted me. Instead, David's voice returned from months earlier. At your age. Companionship. Be realistic. Then came every imagined whisper. Every raised eyebrow. Every future birthday separating Maya and me further. I looked at her and fear spoke before love could. This cannot continue. Maya went still. What cannot? Claire. I am trying to protect you. From what? From waking up 10 years from now and realizing what this cost you. Her face changed. Not anger. Hurt. You taught me that love means telling the truth before it becomes convenient. So tell the truth. I swallowed. I am afraid. Then say that, she whispered. Do not call fear protection. I could not answer. Maya picked up her suitcase. At the door she looked back once. I thought you were teaching me how to stay. Her voice softened. I did not realize you were still learning. Then she walked out, and for the first time since my divorce, the empty house did not feel peaceful. It felt like something precious had just left it. For the next 4 weeks I became excellent at pretending I had made the sensible choice. I went to work early. I answered every email. I finished the restoration plans ahead of schedule. The client who had threatened to leave stayed after Susan reminded them that my private life had nothing to do with my ability to restore a 19th century house. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, each morning I made 1 cup of coffee and stared at the empty place across the counter where Maya used to stand. I missed ridiculous things. Cinnamon on the counter. Her camera batteries charging beside my phone. The way she opened every curtain because she believed rooms deserved morning light. I had spent 28 years thinking loneliness meant being alone. Maya taught me that loneliness could also mean knowing exactly who was missing. Then David called. He asked me to dinner at the restaurant where we had celebrated our 20th anniversary. Against my better judgment I went. He looked familiar beneath the soft restaurant lights. Safe even. For an hour we discussed work, mutual friends, the furniture still divided between us. Then he reached across the table. Claire, we could try again. I looked at his hand but did not take it. Why? Because 28 years should mean something. They do. They mean 28 years. His face tightened. You know what I mean. He leaned closer. Whatever happened with that young woman, people will forget. At least with me, you would not have to explain yourself to everyone. There it was. The offer I once would have mistaken for security. A life small enough that nobody questioned it. I looked around the restaurant and remembered how many dinners I had spent choosing the correct words, the correct smile, the correct version of myself. No, I said. David blinked. No. I spent most of my life trying to make myself easy for other people to understand. I am finished doing that. When I walked outside, the November air felt sharp and clean. For the first time, ending my marriage did not feel like losing something. Felt like choosing something. 2 days later, a package arrived at my office. No return address. I knew who had sent it before I opened it. Inside were 3 photographs. In the first, I was laughing at my niece's wedding beneath strings of lights. On the back, Maya had written 1 word. Notice. The second showed me sitting beside the darkened window during the storm, my face tired and unguarded. Stay. The third stopped me completely. I stood alone on the porch of the restoration house after the storm, sunlight breaking through clouds behind me. Tell the truth. I sat at my desk holding those photographs until the office became quiet around me. Then I understood. I had believed those lessons belonged to Maya. I thought I was the older woman with experience to offer, the one who understood commitment because I had survived 28 years of marriage. But Maya had noticed me when I was trying to disappear. She had stayed when grief made me difficult to reach. She had told me the truth even when that truth risked losing me. She already knew how to love. I was the student. Beneath the final photograph was a small card. Maya had written only an address, a date, and 6 words. My first Charleston exhibition. No expectations. The exhibition was tomorrow night. I looked at the photograph again, then reached for my coat. For once, I was not going to wait until fear became convenient. The next evening, I stood outside a small gallery on King Street for almost 5 minutes before finding the courage to open the door. Warm light spilled across polished wood floors. People moved quietly between photographs of Charleston after the storm, familiar streets transformed by rain, reflections, and unexpected sunlight. I found Maya before she found me. She stood near the far wall speaking with an older couple, wearing a simple dark green dress, her hair tucked behind one ear. For one selfish second I only watched her. Then her eyes lifted. Everything else disappeared. Maya excused herself and walked toward me slowly. You came, she said. I almost did not. I know. That surprised me. How? She gave me the smallest smile. I know you now. Before I could answer, something behind her caught my attention. A photograph nearly 4 feet tall occupied the center wall. It was me standing on the porch of the restoration house, sunlight breaking through storm clouds around me. I looked tired, strong, uncertain, alive. Beneath it was a small card with 3 words. A woman who stayed. My throat tightened. Maya stood beside me without speaking. You got something wrong, I finally said. Her face fell slightly. What? I turned toward her. I did not stay. I sent you away. Claire. Let me finish. My hands were trembling, but I did not hide them. I thought experience meant knowing how to avoid mistakes. I thought being older meant I was supposed to have answers. Then you arrived and made me realize I had spent years confusing safety with happiness. Maya's eyes filled with tears. I stepped closer. I think I owe you one final lesson. Which one? Love is choosing someone after fear has given you every reason not to. Maya breathed out slowly. And what are you choosing? You. The answer was easier than I expected. Not because 27 years suddenly disappeared. They did not. Not because the future became predictable. It never would. I chose her because uncertainty was no longer enough reason to abandon something true. Maya reached for my hand. This time I did not look around to see who was watching. 6 months later, her toothbrush was still somehow always on the wrong side of my bathroom sink. She still opened every curtain before breakfast. I still woke 2 hours earlier and made coffee too strong for her. We disagreed about music, thermostat settings, and whether photographs belong perfectly straight on walls. We also finished restoring that old house together. On opening day, Maya photographed me on the front porch again. I asked whether I looked different. She lowered her camera and smiled. You look like yourself. That became my favorite compliment. I used to believe love arrived when 2 lives fit neatly together. Now I think love sometimes arrives when someone quietly shows you the life you have been afraid to claim. Maya had asked me to help her understand how people stay. In the end, we learned together that staying is not enduring a life that makes you smaller. It is choosing, freely and repeatedly, the place where you can finally become more fully yourself. Thank you for staying with Claire and Maya through their journey. Their story touched your heart? Please subscribe to the channel and share this video with someone who might need its reminder. Sometimes a new beginning does not ask how old we are. It only asks whether we are brave enough to recognize it when it arrives.